Good evening, and you're very welcome to tonight's edition of Business and Enterprise. Before we meet our guest, I might just talk about an event that's coming up next Thursday. That's Thursday the 24th, not the 21st. Thursday the 24th, and is in an Imperial Bar. It's an event that's run ostensibly by the Cavan Chamber of Commerce, and it's part of the Positivity Week. And it's a free event to all businesses in the area, and there'll be several speakers there. One will be Jim Burke, who's the actual chamber president, and I suppose he'll be speaking on the benefits of having a chamber in the town and how, as businesses, we all must look to the positive and keep going. The second speaker will be Finola Keogh, and she's there from the Cavan Institute. And she'll be talking about something that's kind of strange to some of us, the social media and Twitter and Facebook and all that, and how that can help our business, no matter how big, no matter how small, whether they're old standing business or new style business. And I suppose the keynote speaker of the evening is a lady called Ciara Conlon, and she's an author, and she's a positivity and productivity coach to businesses, and she'll be there ostensibly to kind of help us all just be a little bit more positive in the year that's ahead. So that's an event for the Cavan Chamber of Commerce Positivity Week, and it's free of charge to all members of the Chamber of Commerce. And in fact, if you have anything to do with business, you can certainly come along as well. It's in the Imperial Bar, the top floor in the Imperial Bar, and it's starting about 7:30 next Thursday, not tomorrow, Thursday the 24th. So as I said, it is a function run by the Cavan Chamber of Commerce, and as it happens, my next guest is a former president of the Chamber of Commerce, Pacelli Lynch of EASON. You're very welcome to Business and Enterprise.
Thank you, Colm.
As I said, you were the president, in fact, of the Chamber of Commerce up to a couple of years ago.
Yes, I was president for. I was only president for 1 year. I was vice president for 3 years before that. When we actually got up and running, started the chamber again, and it was a very busy time. It's a time that I really enjoyed, meeting a lot of people and trying to.
Eats up an inordinate amount of your business time.
Yeah, people don't realise the amount of time that it actually takes up. Whether you're dealing with all the different queries, whether it's the media, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're on the.
And I suppose you're on call 24 hours a day nearly.
Well, not 24 hours, but you're certainly on call quite a bit.
Yeah.
Certainly 7 days a week as well. So you can get a call. Somebody has an issue or whatever. And
what are you going to do about it? Words to that effect.
It can be that, or it can actually, or you hear about this, or this is something that the chamber has to be involved in, or whatever. So there's a lot of information actually channeled through the president. So they do expect that the president is involved in just about everything, every aspect of business in the town.
So as I said, you are the local franchise holder of EASON's in Cavan and in Mullingar. EASON, a very old company.
Yes, we all know EASON's. They've been in business 125 years, actually 126 years now this year. They celebrated 125 last year. They have changed a lot. They're actually going through a lot of change at the moment, because with a lot of older companies, they probably become a little bit stagnant in their way of thinking and so on. So in the past number of years, they have reinvented themselves. They've become very active in the marketing and even in technology and so on. So they're changing quite fast, and which is good to see. And
did they start as a bookstore?
Originally
they're not one of these companies that they were originally like Nokia, everything's to do fantastic phones. But they started making toilet paper. No, EASON's wasn't one of them companies. It was always book or book related.
It was always, yes. In actual fact, I think the original store in O'Connell Street was originally a W.H. Smith store, and Mr. EASON, as he was then, there's still actually members of the EASON family still involved in that. Yeah, yes, Derek EASON is still involved in it. And I think at the time he was the manager, and he bought the store from W.H. Smith. So that was 126 years ago.
And O'Connell Street was obviously I'm showing my roots here, that's obviously the store that I'd be more familiar with, But I'm sure it has changed considerably over the 126 years, but probably particularly over the last decade.
Yeah, well, that's what I said, that in the last number of years now, they have really kind of took stock of where they were and where they were going, and realised that things are starting to move very fast in the retail, in the technology and online and so on. And they just had to kind of step up a gear, and that's what they've done.
Just speaking online, obviously a lot of the products that are sold in EASON's are affected by online sales. Do EASON's have an online presence to kind of compete with themselves effectively?
They have an online presence. I suppose the one category that actually be affected most online would be the book sales. Most of the other things, people seldom buy the likes of cards, magazines, news, even stationery. They buy very little of that online. Even in the book trade itself, the books for the younger age, for the early learners, people seldom buy those online. They much prefer to actually pick up that book, look at it, feel it. It's a good book for, whether it's Thomas the Tank, whichever. Those books are not really affected by online. It's more the fast novels that actually is appealing to the 20-year-olds, and that sort of, that's the one that has taken off online more so than a lot of the other ones.
But like, not just EASON's, but browsing through bookstores was nearly a national pastime. It's certainly, again, I'm going back 10 years ago when I lived in Dublin. A Saturday, usually a Sunday afternoon, would be spent browsing around the bookstores. It wasn't like I want to buy a new hat and I go in and say that's the hat I want. There was something about a bookstore, be it the ambience, be it the knowledgeable staff that you had there, be it the ability to pick up a book, flick through it and put it back and pick up something else, that made buying a book just more than a transaction.
That's right, yes, and that is still there. People still like to browse. People still like to look for that book. They'll pick up a book, they'll read the back cover and see if it's of interest. They'll browse through it, and yes, that's the book for me, then they'll buy it. There's still something about picking up that book, looking at it, looking at the alternative books, comparing and making your choice. And
because everybody has a preference, some like hardbacks, some like so that it looks well on their bookcase, others like the softback because it's easy to throw in their case or the bag when they're gone.
Oh yes,
paperback, not softback. That's I was trying to think of the correct
the paperback. Yes, without a doubt. People still like browsing books. People still like the feel of them. And I know that we have the e-books, which is competing against the paperback.
Yeah.
But there is something not just the same as picking up a paperback book or a hardback book and browsing through it, and then you have got the whole range of let's say, like your cookbooks, your special books. They don't come across near as well in electronic media as you're flicking the pages and you're looking at your Neville Maguire, cookbook. It just doesn't have the same appeal.
And of course your kids' books, as you said, the Thomas the Tank, or even below the Thomas the Tank. You obviously couldn't let a 3-year-old loose with a Kindle,
Oh yeah, but that's, you can't.
Yeah. Do they still make Ladybird books, by the way?
Oh, they still do, yes. The Ladybird book is still...
Really going back a bit there now.
Yes, yeah. That's actually one of the areas that we have gone into more so is in the early education. We have a whole range of what we would call educational toys, which back to the old days of the wooden blocks of the different colours. We have a whole range of that now. It's going extremely well for us. People are amazed to see it because that's something that they actually had themselves.
Yeah.
And it what it really appeals to is the young kids where it develops their hand coordination, picking up that little square block and putting it into the square hole and so on. There's a whole learning in that in itself, and then you've got your colours and shapes and so on. So that is actually is a big area.
A section in the shop that
we have, yes, yeah. We call that our early education.
And of course kids that kind of are brought up in bookshops will start nosing towards books, whereas there's some kids, teenagers, you could think, probably at this stage, and they all boast the fact that, well, I've never read a book, you know, and it's probably because reading a book is kind of something strange to them, whereas if you were kind of hanging around books, not necessarily to read, but as I said, if you were in your early learning centre and in your shop, and then there was books beside it, it's an easy step.
It is, yes, and in actual fact, we've never actually bought a present for a child other than a book. And that has always been our way. We've never, let's say if you're going to a party or a birthday present, it has always been a book.
And it was just before you had...
No, always, no, long before.
Oh, so obviously that is what prompted you into the book selling area.
And the same with our own kids, you know. So in actually, when you have books lying around the place, they do actually get into them. And they do like, you know, bit by bit they'll get into the books themselves. And they'll start reading books and they'll start digging for information. And every time they open a book, they actually learn something.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a gradual progression, you know, and it's developing the mind all the time.
And there's some books that have kind of caught the imagination with children. The Harry Potter books, they kind of came from nowhere, and literally caught the imagination to the extent that I remember, again, they were being released when I was in Dublin, and I was working for a particular radio station at the time, and it was a midnight launch, and everyone was there recording the kids as they were kind of waiting outside, and they were all dressed up in their favourite Harry Potter outfit, and it really caught kids' imagination, and they started reading the Harry Potter books, and then it obviously progressed.
Oh yeah, well, the Harry Potter book. Well, okay. Once you start talking about magic and potions and so on and so on and so on, then everybody gets lost in that, and especially the young imagination, you know, just loves that sort of thing. And then the whole marketing program behind the Harry Potter was absolutely brilliant, you know, where they actually had the midnight launch, and that was actually happening on the 21st of July, you know. Yeah. And it was just, the whole thing was just kind of building up to this climax of the launch of the next Harry Potter book. And there's 7 books in total, and any kids that was actually between 10 years to 20 when Harry Potter came out first, they just got stuck into it.
And obviously while they were waiting on the next book to come out, there was the Irish version, I won't call it the Irish version, but an Irish similarity, books like Artemis Fowl, and then there was other books that kind of kids who would kind of say, well, that's a bit like Harry Potter, and the idea of actually picking up a book to read for the fun of it just kind of developed, and I suppose then it was followed on with the Twilight series of books, you know, and as you say, it's probably more the marketing, smart marketing people behind these books that are pushing it, but it is putting kids towards reading more books than they normally would.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, they have the whole marketing drive behind it. It is, as you say, smart marketing is right. But okay, the book has to be appealing to the particular audience that it's actually targeted at, you know. And when you're actually dealing with teenagers, if something becomes appealing to a small group of people, suddenly they tell their friends, and suddenly it just becomes, let's say, goes viral. You know, it's the book to have. Yeah. You know, and then they can't wait for the next one to come out, and so on and so on. And yes, it just drives itself. You know, when it's launched properly in the first case.
I suppose the likes of Harry Potter, they're just fantasy books. And I suppose you couldn't talk about a fantasy book without bringing the 50 Shades of Grey up, and that brought a completely different audience into reading books.
Oh yeah, well, again, it was just one of those things that...
what was that thing? Because if I'm not mistaken, she's an unknown author.
Yes.
In fairness, it's the type of book that has been written since time immemorial. Cavemen were probably drawn the equivalent of 50 Shades of Grey on it. How does a book like that, from an unknown author,
just take off?
Obviously it was marketing, but I'm sure she went in to a publishing company with this idea of a book, and I'm sure she was one of maybe 100, I don't know how many books there are, maybe that's another question I might ask you later. It must have been one of 100 books that was launched that week, or certainly that month. Why did that one become the
The 50 Shades was initially launched as an ebook, purely as a download, and it didn't take off. So they turned around, and then they went back to the original paper and print, and it started taking off slowly, but again it just touched on some little thing for people, and then they started passing it to their friends and so on and so on. You have to read this book, there's a certain amount of humour in it and so on and so on.
Certain amount of humour. That's a bit like saying, well, I only get Playboy for the articles, you know.
but it became the talking point.
Yeah.
It became, and then it just took off. It just went again. People are coming in looking for that book that everybody's talking about.
Yeah.
You know, and you just knew what, you know, didn't know what the name of it was.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those incredible...
Just something you said there, people don't know the name, but do you have people coming in looking for books? You know the one about the fella who falls in love with the girl, I think it's called, they've no idea what it's called, and it's a vague storyline, and they expect you to know immediately.
What you will get quite often is somebody coming in saying, I was driving and I was listening to Pat Kenny this morning, and they were reviewing a book, and it was about whatever category.
Yeah.
I don't know who it was, or this and the other, you know, or the name of the book. You wouldn't happen to have it. You know. So what we have, in actual fact, to help us, is we have a listing of all the books that's going to be reviewed on all the main chat shows, and even on television. We get that on a Friday for the following 2 weeks. So when somebody comes in and they're looking for that book, okay, which show was it, which radio station, and take a look and say, was it this one? Yeah.
Ah,
you know,
yeah.
You know,
and, and your database, the computer listing that you have, does that list every book ever printed, or only recent books, or...?
Mostly only recent books, because every book ever printed, like, you know, that would be absolutely massive. We have 2 websites. Normally it's the EASON. We buy most of our books from EASON's, but we have another place where we actually buy books from the UK, and normally they will carry about 500,000 titles in stock, and it's a very good backup to EASON's, because if somebody comes in and they're looking for something which was kind of out 5 years ago, 10 years ago, EASON's will not have it unless it's still popular. You know, EASON's won't have it. So, and actually that's where we actually, this site is Gardeners in the UK, and so we buy quite a bit from Gardeners. You know, and it's a great source of those rare books, you know, that's not as popular.
So if you're looking for, as you say, a slightly obscure book, it is possible to go into EASON's in Cavan or Mullingar, and it can be traced and...
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. So we either buy it from EASON's. If it's not in EASON's, then the next site we go to is Gardeners. And we have an account there, and we just order the book, and the book will come in, or it'll tell you that's not in, or it's due to come into them on such a date. Yeah,
you know. But obviously, if it's a new book, obviously it's due to come in. But
if it's a new book,
the obscure books that you remember your father reading, and I was prompted at a family meeting. He says, "God, I must go and get a copy of that." You know, you can just go in with the title, and your computer wizards will work wonders and track it down, and it'll come in a while.
That's right. And actually, there was it's about a year ago now, there was a lady came into the shop, and she was wondering if we had such and such a book. She had a name. It was an Irish book based in Dublin. Now, EASON wouldn't have it. This was a book that was actually out in the 70s. And we traced it to Gardeners in the UK. We ordered the book and got the book for her. She was absolutely delighted.
Fantastic. Because your staff aren't just staff members. A lot of them are the experts in the books, and they're really helpful to people who are coming in with these odd queries. You go into some shops, have you got such a book? No. And that's it, you know. But your staff seem to go out of their way to help them.
Well, the way we organise ourselves, we have the different departments. So for books, we have 2 dedicated people to books. So that's their number one, is books. So there's always one of them in the shop, bar very early in the morning, or between 6 and 6:30.
Yeah.
But between 9 and 6, Monday to Saturday, there's one of those people in the shop. And they will be able to track down whatever book. If it's available at all, they'll track it down. They will be able to help you.
And this would all come from your personal insistence on customer service and customers.
Oh yeah, and saying then, okay, when you actually go to, let's say, for school books, we've dedicated people to school books. You can't have somebody knowing everything in the shop.
Exactly,
You can't become okay, we have it that people have a good grasp of everything in the shop. But okay, when you're looking for something, then okay, some of the dedicated staff to that particular section.
You just mentioned their school books. Yeah. Obviously, from August, September, it must be a kind of all systems go getting school books in.
From May.
Oh, from May?
From May, we will always get our first school book lists in May. Yes. And you will have...
we never tortured our kids. We always let them have the guts of their summer holidays.
Some people, actually, as soon as they get their school book list, they'll actually drop it in. And we'll put everything together, and they get a text message, whether it's in a week or a fortnight or whatever it is, when everything is put together, and say your books are now ready, and you get a reference number. So just come in and quote the reference number, and your books are there ready to roll. And
now, obviously, EASON is synonymous with books, but you have a huge range of other products as well. What's some of the other products you do apart from books?
Well, I suppose the obvious ones. Okay, after books, then you go into your magazine. What we call news. So that's your newspapers and your magazines. And we will carry about 1,200 titles of magazines. It's hard to believe that
1,200 different titles of magazines.
We carry 1,200 titles of magazines. EASON on O'Connell Street will carry between 2,000 and 2,500 titles. So we carry, that's the number of titles of magazine that we carry. Whether it's a weekly, bi-weekly, a monthly, or bi-monthly, and you've even got the ones in which are seasonal, which is your spring, summer, autumn, winter.
And that 1,200, is that the common ones, or do you have the one or two copies of, I don't know, Model Maker of Hats Weekly, or do you have really kind of specialised magazine as well?
Yes, and we have an extract. It can be that, let's say, if you're into one particular, let's say, model making of whatever, toy trains or whatever.
Yeah.
And instead of actually, okay, that doesn't sell, but you're into that, we order that in specially for you, and it's put by you in the drawer, and your name is on it, and you can come in whenever you want, and you pick up your issue, and it comes in like.
And is that at cover price or
cover price?
Cover price now.
Yeah. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. No, we actually carry quite a number of magazines like that for people. Just purely for that individual, so it doesn't actually go on the shelf.
And art supplies, you've had some artists in there giving you demonstrations and making you even more famous than you are.
Well, we had Harry Feeney, is a gentleman. We had him in Mullingar, and we had him then in Cavan. And a lot of people actually missed. Even though we advertise on the Anglo-Celtic, we advertise on the radio, and people only heard it afterwards, and they were saying, they were annoyed at themselves for missing it.
Yeah.
So we might get him back again. There is quite a number of people would love to get him back again and not miss it.
And when he came in, what did he do? Was he sitting talking to people?
No, he gave a working demonstration.
A working demonstration.
Yes. Yeah. And the people in fact who were there. There was probably about 17, 18 people, but they were people who were into art.
Yeah. No point in having a crowd of 200 people who don't give a damn about art, but just came to see what was going on. If you have 18, 20 people who are artists, appreciate art, that's much better.
Yeah, and like they were there to actually learn some of the little tips and techniques and how do you achieve this or that or the other, and that effect on it. So yeah, he threw two nice watercolours and took questions from people, and he showed them how to do this, that and the other and so on.
And they were all drawn and used with products available in EASON's?
Oh yeah, everything. And he was even demonstrating the difference in the quality of the different types of brushes there, or whether it's the paper or whatever it was, and what you can actually do. And I actually have one lovely painting by him, and actually it's just using one colour. So it's a monochrome. Wow. It's all in grey, but the different shades, you know.
50 Shades of Grey.
It's 50 Shades of Grey, but it's lovely.
And of course, stationery, both for school and offices. That's a big part of the EASON's supply.
Yeah, you have your school, office, and home stationery. And January next year is a very good month for us with stationery, because everybody is starting anew. Everybody wants those lever arch folders. They're putting everything away in this and the other, of box files, or whatever it is, and everybody starts again, and then they need their new diaries and so on.
The new diary, yeah.
So all of that starts in January, and as a result, January is a good month for us.
So January is a good month, and what do you see for the rest of the year? Is it going to be a good, positive year for EASON's?
Well, I can only go by last year. We've all seen, 3 or 4 or 5 years of a continual downturn.
Yeah.
And last April was the first time we've seen an increase. And every month from April until the end of the year, there was an actual increase.
Fantastic.
Yes. So,
well, long may it continue.
I think most people in actual fact have seen that increase and experience. Not major now, but but in the right direction compared to
before. It's better to have a little bit up than a lot down.
Yes.
Well, Pacelli Lynch of EASON's, thank you for the time and to coming in to talk to us here on Business and Enterprise. So that's it for this week. Do tune in next week. And as I said, don't forget, next Thursday the 24th, in the Imperial Bar, a free event. There'll be some networking there, some good speakers, and it'll be a chance for you to brighten up your business year starting off afresh. So I've been Colm Colgan. Thanks for tuning in, and talk to you next week. Have a great week. Bye-bye.